Bienvenidos, aloha, welcome into Sunset Rewind. Week 10 is over, the regular season is over, but we're going to keep covering Sunset League football into the playoffs and beyond. Follow us on social media at Sunset_Rewind. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and check out our website. It is fully loaded with stats, recaps, videos. It's your hub for Sunset League football. Howard, before we break down these final three games of the Sunset League regular season, let's look at the final standings. It shook out largely like we expected it to. Los Al in first, Edison in second, Corona Del Mar in third. We won't get into the playoff picture today because at the time that we're recording this, CIF hasn't released their finalized playoff brackets, so I don't want to speculate on that yet, but we will do a full playoff preview show in the next couple days. We're also going to do something really special, a People's Choice Sunset League MVP, so we'll have a special show for that. But before we get into the games, Howard, final standings, any thoughts on those?
Well, it shook out largely, like you said, how we thought it would. You know, Los Al, absolute dominant team. They took the Sunset League championship. I think what was interesting was seeing Los Al, CDM, and Edison go up against each other and see how close those games were. You know, we weren't sure. We thought it was going to be Los Al, Edison, CDM, but we didn't know if Los Al would be blowing out Edison and CDM, or would they make it, would these other teams make it a close game? And they did. So I was happy to see that three-team battle at the top. But it did end the way we thought it would. One other thing we were watching that we thought was pretty interesting was the Newport Harbor, Huntington Beach battle. Who's going to take fourth place in league? Who's going to emerge as maybe an at-large playoff team? Maybe a team that presses and challenges for the third spot. But we were definitely watching that battle. And to our surprise somewhat, Newport Harbor came out on top with a pretty dominant performance over Huntington Beach. And that was at a time where Newport Harbor hadn't won a ton of games. Huntington Beach was already a 4-win team at that time. So that was a big point in the season that swung the standings, Huntington Beach versus Newport.
Yeah, and that was something we had our eye on, was that Oilers-Sailors battle. But I think overall, both fan bases as well as ourselves were a little bit disappointed in both teams. I don't think we expected both the Sailors and the Oilers to finish with losing records on the season.
Well, I mean, absolutely. We were high on both of these guys. We have to say that as media members, as people who analyze this stuff, we were very high on Newport Harbor and Huntington Beach. We love both of their senior quarterbacks. We thought they had a lot of talent at receiver, both teams. There's guys on the defenses that we like. So we were high, maybe a little too high on both of these teams, but we felt like we had reasons to be high on them early. There were up and down seasons for both teams, but ultimately we saw stuff that we liked out of both programs.
Well, let's start off recapping the final game of the regular season for the Sunset League champion, back-to-back Sunset League champions, the Los Alamitos Griffins. They won over Newport Harbor 48-6. The Griffins finished 9-1 on the regular season. Newport Harbor finishes 3-7. We expected Los Al to dominate this game, and they did. And the Sailors' season-long woes were apparent in this one. The defense kept it tight early. It was 7-0 at the end of the first quarter, but the offense couldn't hang, and we ended the game with a running clock. We talked to Newport Harbor head coach Peter Lofthouse this morning, and he had some positive things to say about the defense.
Well, I was really pleased with our defense. I felt like our defense did a great job playing against Los Al's offense. I mean, I know you look at the score and you say to yourself, well, you gave up 48 points, but that's not real indicative of how well the defensive kids played all night.
Well, throughout the last few games, that's been a big strength for Newport Harbor. It's been their defense. They're not the biggest team of all time. They're not the most athletic team of all time, but they play relentless defense. They swarm to the ball. Real competitive players on their defense. So, and like you said, in the first quarter, they made it tough on Los Al. They got an interception. They forced a couple of punts. Los Al only scored on the very first kick return of the game, which was taken to the house by Alec Wills on an excellent return. So that Newport Harbor defense gave their team some hope, gave their team some confidence, but ultimately the offense of Newport Harbor couldn't match the effort of the defense and couldn't move the ball at all in Los Al.
Yeah, it's funny because you look at the Sailors and their defense has been a strong point to the season, but this is why it matters to actually watch the games, because if you just looked at the numbers, you would say they just gave up 48 points to Los Al. They gave up 35 to Corona Del Mar. They had a span where they gave up 94 points over 2 games. But if you actually watch the Sailors play, you realize the offense, the stagnant nature of the offense is often what led to so many points being given up. So the defense, despite what the raw numbers might look like, the defense actually was a bright spot for the Sailors this year.
Yeah, because when your offense is not moving the ball, the defense is on the field all night. And when you're constantly on the field, you're going up against these Oklahoma commits, these other Division I kids at Los Al. You know, we even saw guys, Chase Grossfeld got into the game, excellent receiver, got his first catch of the year, first touchdown of the year. So we always talk about the weapons are so abundant at Los Al. Ethan O'Connor had 2 touchdowns. Alec Wills had a receiving touchdown. Just it's too much to match up against. And when your offense isn't moving the ball, there's no way you're going to keep these guys off the board. But credit to Newport Harbor for finding a way, very last play of the game, getting a touchdown. A.J. Gutron-Moore found Josiah Lamarque in the back of the end zone for a touchdown. Josiah beat his man in one-on-one coverage. And even though it was 48-6, you go off the field on a final play that's positive, you're chest bumping, feeling good about yourselves, and hoping you have an opportunity to play some playoff football.
Moving on to the team that finished second in Sunset League for the second year in a row, the Edison Chargers. They finished the year 7-3 on the regular season with a 41-6 win over the Huntington Beach Oilers, who dropped to 4-6 on the year. Howard, this is somewhat of a rivalry game. These two schools are located very close to each other, just a couple miles apart. We heard the Oilers came out physical, tried to make a game of it, but then Cody Grbic had a first quarter interception. He ended up with 2 on the game, and that swung the momentum in the Chargers' favor. They never looked back. We talked to Chargers head coach Jeff Grady this morning, and he credited that front 7 of the Chargers defense with being the heart and soul of what they do defensively.
You know, when we get pressure and Letterman and Grbic, those 2 guys get rolling, that's kind of obviously all 4 of those guys. You know, Petro, Abernathy, and Locke. When those guys get it going, it's you got a shot.
Well, this defensive front for Edison has been consistent all season long. We've seen them pitch multiple shutouts, hold multiple teams to 1 score or less. It's been an impressive group. You know, we love their offense. We love the 4, 5, 6 receivers that they have, the dominant running back in Troy Fletcher. But every time we talk to Coach Grady, he says everything starts with our defense, and particularly with this front 7. So you see guys like Hudson Letterman and Austin Grbic getting all kinds of pressure and tackles for loss. You have Peyton Gregory as a linebacker getting multiple defensive touchdowns this year. I mean, he's a playmaker. These guys are just making their presence felt, and they hold a team like Huntington Beach, which we know can have a high-powered offense. They held them to no first downs until the second half. That's tough. When your offense can't get anything going, you know, that's a credit to that front and getting pressure and making it uncomfortable all night.
A.J. Perez did connect with Caleb Kelly in the fourth quarter for his 1 touchdown pass of the game, but Perez, he was under pressure all night. He threw 3 interceptions, and that Huntington Beach offense, they never got comfortable facing the Edison Chargers defense.
Yeah, when you're giving the ball back 3 times to the Edison offense, you see Parker Awad throwing multiple touchdowns, Troy Fletcher running for multiple touchdowns. I mean, you're just not going to keep them off the board. So you got to play close to mistake-free football if you're Huntington Beach in a game like that. And while they did come out fired up, it was a little bit chippy early. Like you said, it's a rivalry game. They're just ultimately, they didn't have enough firepower to keep up with Edison.
Moving on to the third and final game of Week 10 in Sunset League, the Sea Kings, they finished third in league for the second year in a row. They go 8-2 on the season, those 2 losses coming in Sunset League. The Sea Kings dominated Fountain Valley on Friday night, 49-7 in Davidson Field. Fountain Valley, they won their first game of the year. They then lost their next 9. They finished the year 1-9 on the season. You know, Corona Del Mar, they handled business. They came out, Oliver Ayala pick 6 to open the game. Corona Del Mar establishes the run with Evan Sanders. They never let Fountain Valley get going. What else is there to say about Corona Del Mar? They came out, they did what they needed to do.
They looked like the team they were supposed to. They clicked on all fronts. Like you said, Oliver Ayala got it going early with the pick 6. Aiden Walsh had a pick. Blake Stern had a pick. Just a dominant performance by the defensive backs and the defense of Corona Del Mar, making everything tough on Fountain Valley. And then on the offensive side, as you said, Evan Sanders, another big game. We know he's the heart and soul of the offense. But then we also have David Razor, who's the leader of the offense. He threw for 2 touchdowns. Caleb Annett had 2 touchdowns, the backup quarterback. So it was a well-rounded performance. You know, John Tipton had a big night, as always. All the receivers from Corona Del Mar had a big night. It's a team that operates like a well-oiled machine, and they're getting ready for playoff football. And they used this game as somewhat of a tune-up, got some guys in who don't always get a ton of snaps, and they look great.
As we mentioned, Evan Sanders had a big night, and we talked to Corona Del Mar head coach Dan O'Shea about Sanders this morning.
Well, I thought Evan ran it really well. I think he was about 10 yards a carry last night. It's just, as you can see, you know, him just missed those first few weeks. He looks like Evan Sanders, the last 3 or 4 weeks like he did last year. Just he's fresh, he's strong, he's playing really, really well.
Fountain Valley, tough year for them as expected. Year 1 for Coach David Gutierrez. They got a win in week 1, and I feel like we say this every week. We're not just selling hope, but Howard, I know you and I, we believe in what Coach Gutierrez is building there, even if he is a few years away from getting the program to where he wants it to be.
Absolutely. It's only year 1 for Coach Gutierrez, and everybody we talked to from the very beginning sing his praises. They think he's got stuff going in the right way. I mean, this week we talked to Coach O'Shea about the Fountain Valley CDM game. And even Coach O'Shea, who's the biggest supporter of Sunset League football, he talked about how much he was impressed with Coach Gutierrez and how he believes that that's a program that hired the right guy and they're going to be going in the right direction. So it'll be fun to watch over the next few seasons. We know it'll take a few seasons for Fountain Valley to get where they want to get to, but they did some stuff this year that Coach Gutierrez was impressed with. He's got a group of juniors that he really likes. So we'll be watching them and rooting for them to, continue to grow and hopefully get to a point where they're making some strides and picking up some wins in the Sunset League.
Absolutely. We got 3 automatic playoff berths for the Los Alamitos Griffins, Edison Chargers, and Corona Del Mar Sea Kings. By the time you're watching this, you might know if there's some at-large teams getting in. We're going to preview all that this week on our playoff preview show, and also we're going to have some really cool stuff going on sunsetrewind.com and a special episode where we're going to nominate and then give a People's Choice Sunset League MVP award out. So I'm looking forward to that and giving our list of nominees. Howard, any final thoughts on the regular season? I know we're going to do a whole wrap-up show when the playoffs are over, when all the dust is settled. Hopefully it's after Thanksgiving because hopefully some teams make deep runs. But any final thoughts right now on this 10-week regular season?
Well, it was a fun season. It was definitely a competitive season. And even though Week 10 ended with some lopsided scores and some blowouts, there was some high-quality football played in the Sunset League this year. We got a game of the week early on in the season between Los Al and Edison on Bally Sports. So really, really fun year. I feel like the top teams delivered the way that we thought they would. Now let's see what happens in the playoffs. Maybe we even get a Division II playoff matchup between CDM and Edison. So we'll have to watch out for that.
Oh, that would be fun. Yeah, I can't wait. I hope some Sunset League teams, at least one of the guaranteed 3, make a deep run, maybe multiple deep runs. Looking forward to the postseason, a fun 10-week regular season. We blinked and it was over, but we'll keep coverage coming for you on Sunset Rewind. Follow us on social media at @sunset_rewind. I hope you picked up a magazine. I hope you got yourself a hat. And please bookmark sunsetrewind.com to stay tuned in to everything we're doing throughout the postseason, throughout the offseason. We're just getting started here at Sunset Rewind. So for all of our viewers, all of the players, parents, and coaches in the Sunset League, for my broadcast partner, Howard Kroom, this is Alex Crawford saying, from Saddleback to the Pacific Ocean, from the 405 to PCH, you've been watching Sunset Rewind. Thanks for tuning in.